Sarah Chen's hands shook as she unearthed the small body from the snow. Not because of the cold, but because the child was still breathing. Ranger, her Belgian Malinois, had refused to come inside for 20 minutes, barking at nothing, digging at nothing, until Sarah finally followed him into the blizzard and found everything. The little girl's lips were blue, her fingers clutching a torn photograph. And when her eyes fluttered open for just a second, she whispered two words that made Sarah's blood freeze. Batman. Where are you watching from tonight? If stories of courage, loyalty, and second chances speak to your heart, please hit that subscribe button and stay with us until the very end. Drop a comment telling us your city. We love seeing how far these stories of hope can travel. Now, let's begin. Ranger had been staring at the door for 17 minutes. Sarah Chen knew because she'd been watching the clock, watching him, trying to convince herself that a 7-year-old Belgian Malinois with 34 confirmed saves under his vest didn't suddenly go crazy for no reason. But Ranger didn't do crazy. He did calculated. He did precise. He did the kind of alert work that made hardened search and rescue coordinators go quiet with respect. Right now, he was doing something Sarah had never seen before. His body stood rigid 3 feet from the cabin door, every muscle coiled like wire about to snap. His ears were locked forward so hard they looked carved from stone. The growl coming from his chest wasn't the warning growl he used on bears, or the aggressive growl he used on suspects. This was different, deeper, older, like something ancient had woken up inside him and was trying to claw its way out through sound alone. Ranger? Sarah kept her voice level, the way she'd been trained. What is it, buddy? He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge her, just kept staring at that door like it was the mouth of hell and something on the other side needed him. Sarah's pulse kicked up despite herself. 18 months. 18 months since Marcus died on that mountain. 18 months since she'd ignored Ranger's warning about the snow shelf. 18 months since she'd learned the hard way that when a dog like this told you something was wrong, you didn't debate it, you listened. But there was nothing out there. Just the Alaskan wilderness doing what it always did in February, burying the world in white and cold and silence. The thermometer outside read -20. The nearest neighbor was 40 miles south. The nearest town, Timber Ridge, was a 2-hour snowmobile ride on a good day, and today wasn't a good day. The storm rolling in from the north was already painting her windows opaque. Ranger whined, high, sharp, desperate. Then he did something that made Sarah's stomach drop. He howled. Ranger didn't howl. Not when he found bodies. Not when he found survivors. Not when Sarah had collapsed at Marcus's funeral and sobbed into his fur for 3 hours straight. He worked in silence because silence was professional, and Ranger was nothing if not professional. But now he threw his head back and howled like a wolf, calling to something human ears couldn't hear, and the sound cut through the cabin with such raw urgency that Sarah felt her body move before her brain gave permission. Okay. Her hand was already reaching for her parka. Okay, we're going. She geared up fast, muscle memory from 1,000 searches. Insulated boots, thermal layers, headlamp, emergency pack with first aid and heat blankets. She clipped a line to Ranger's vest, not to control him, but to keep them connected in case the storm swallowed visibility whole. The second she cracked the door open, Ranger exploded through it. Not a casual trot, not even a run. He lunged into the blizzard like he was being pulled by something stronger than leash, stronger than training, stronger than anything Sarah had ever felt him do. The line snapped taut in her hands and she stumbled forward into wind so cold it felt like being slapped with sheet metal. Ranger, slow down! He didn't slow down. He moved with terrifying purpose through snow already knee-deep and climbing, his dark shape cutting through white like a shadow through fog. Sarah's headlamp carved a weak tunnel of light through the storm, just enough to see his prints before the wind erased them. They were heading west, away from the road, away from anything resembling civilization, into the teeth of the wilderness where the trees grew so thick the snow couldn't reach the ground and the cold turned cruel. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. Bear? No, Ranger would have gone defensive, not aggressive. Another dog? Impossible. Nothing survived out here alone. A person? God, she hoped not. Nobody should be out here. Nobody could survive this. Ranger barked once, sharp, commanding, and changed direction so suddenly Sarah almost lost her footing. Now they were angling toward the ridgeline, toward the open space where the snow drifted deep and deadly. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. She'd been alone in this cabin for 18 months, doing nothing but surviving, and her body wasn't ready for this. But Ranger was ready. Ranger was always ready. 200 yards from the cabin, he stopped, just froze mid-stride like someone had pressed pause on his entire existence. His nose dropped to the snow. His body went rigid again, but different this time, not alerting to danger, alerting to discovery. He started digging, fast, frantic, throwing snow behind him in huge arcs that caught the wind and vanished into white. His paws moved so fast they blurred, and the sound, God, the sound was desperate, like he was trying to dig through the snow to save something that was running out of time. Ranger, what? Then Sarah heard it. Faint, muffled, barely there beneath the wind's howl, a sound that didn't belong to nature. Crying. Not an animal. A child. Sarah dropped to her knees and started digging with him, gloved hands scooping snow that felt heavy as concrete. Her headlamp beam bounced wildly as she worked, illuminating nothing, illuminating everything. Ranger's breathing was harsh and loud beside her. The wind screamed. The cold bit through every layer she wore. And then her hand hit something soft. Fabric. Blue fabric. A coat. Oh, God. Sarah's voice came out broken. Oh, God, there's someone here. She dug faster, clearing snow from what was clearly a small shoulder, a small torso. A small body curled in on itself like a question mark. Ranger's nose pressed close, sniffing, checking, his tail low and still. When Sarah finally cleared enough snow to see the face, her heart stopped. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, maybe 7, pale skin gone gray-blue with cold, dark hair frozen in tangled clumps around her face, eyes closed, lips parted just enough to show shallow, rattling breaths that condensed in tiny clouds. She was alive. Barely, but alive. I've got you. Sarah's training kicked in like a switch flipping. She checked for neck injury, checked for bleeding, checked airways. Hypothermia was the enemy now. Wet clothes, low core temperature, shock. I've got you, sweetheart. Stay with me. The girl's eyelids fluttered. Her fingers twitched. Both hands clutched around something Sarah couldn't quite see. A paper? A photograph? It was too dark, too chaotic to tell. Sarah stripped off her own outer parka and wrapped it around the tiny body, then lifted her carefully, cradling her against her chest where body heat could start doing its work. The girl weighed almost nothing, felt like holding a bird. Ranger, home, now! Ranger turned and started moving back toward the cabin, slower this time, checking over his shoulder every few seconds to make sure Sarah was following. The wind tried to knock her sideways. The snow tried to bury her tracks, but she kept moving, kept clutching this fragile life against her chest, kept putting one foot in front of the other, because stopping wasn't an option. When they finally crashed through the cabin door, Sarah didn't waste time celebrating. She went straight to the fireplace, laid the girl on the rug, started stripping off wet clothes. Ranger stationed himself right beside them, nose inches from the girl's face, monitoring every breath. Thermal blankets, heat packs,
warm water bottles wrapped in towels positioned at the girl's core and neck. Sarah's hands moved automatically while her mind screamed questions she couldn't answer. Who was this child? How did she get out there? Why was she alone? How long had she been buried? The girl's skin was ice. Her pulse was thread thin. But she was breathing, and that meant there was still a chance. Come on, sweetheart. Sarah rubbed the girl's hands gently, trying to stimulate circulation without causing damage. Come on, stay with me. What's your name? Can you tell me your name? The girl's eyes opened. Just a crack. Just enough for Sarah to see they were brown, deep, dark brown, and filled with a terror so complete it made Sarah's throat close. The girl's mouth moved. Sound came out, barely more than a whisper, hoarse and broken. Bad men? Sarah froze. What? Bad men? The girl's voice cracked. Her fingers tightened around whatever she was holding. They're coming. Then her eyes rolled back, and she went limp. No. No, no, no. Sarah checked her pulse. Still there, still weak, but there. Stay with me. Please, stay with me. She grabbed her radio off the shelf, the emergency channel that connected to Timber Ridge's volunteer paramedic service. Her hands shook as she keyed the mic. This is Sarah Chen, North Ridge Cabin. I need immediate medical assistance. I have a juvenile, approximately 6 years old, severe hypothermia, unresponsive. Repeat, I need medical assistance now. Static crackled back at her. Then a voice, male, calm but concerned. Sarah, this is dispatch. Roads are closed. Storm's got everything locked down. Helicopter can't fly in this. Then send a snowmobile. Send something. This kid is dying. Best we can do is 4 hours out. Maybe 5 with visibility this bad. Can you stabilize her? Sarah looked down at the tiny body wrapped in blankets, at Ranger's dark eyes watching her with absolute trust, at the storm throwing itself against her windows like it wanted inside. I'll keep her alive, Sarah said. Just get here. She clicked off the radio and focused on the work. Warming techniques, monitoring vitals, keeping airways clear. The girl's core temperature was dangerously low, somewhere in the 80s, Sarah guessed. Anything below 90 was critical. Below 85 was usually fatal. But Sarah had pulled people back from worse. She'd dragged survivors out of avalanches after 40 minutes buried. She'd kept a hunter alive for 6 hours with a severed femoral artery, using nothing but pressure and prayer. She could do this. She had to do this. Ranger hadn't moved from his position beside the girl. His head was up, ears swiveling, tracking sounds Sarah's human ears couldn't catch. Every few minutes he'd glance at Sarah with an expression that was almost human, checking in, making sure she had this, making sure they were doing enough. You found her, buddy? Sarah's voice came out thick. You saved her life. Ranger's tail moved once, not a wag, an acknowledgement. 30 minutes passed. The girl's color started to improve, less gray, more pink. Her breathing deepened, her pulse strengthened. Sarah allowed herself a moment of hope. Then Ranger's head snapped toward the window. His body went rigid again. That same tension from before, that same ancient warning.
A low growl rolled out of his chest. Sarah's blood went cold. "What is it?" Ranger moved to the window, nose pressed to the glass, staring into the white chaos outside. His hackles rose, his tail dropped. Someone was out there. Sarah moved quickly, dimming the lanterns, positioning herself where she could see the door and the girl simultaneously.
Her hand found the shotgun she kept mounted above the fireplace, not because she expected trouble, but because Alaska taught you to expect everything. "Who's out there?" she called out, voice hard. "Identify yourself." No answer. Just the wind, just the storm, just Ranger's growl getting deeper. Then, faint but unmistakable, Sarah heard it. The low rumble of an engine. Multiple engines, getting closer. She looked down at the girl on her floor, at the terror still etched in her unconscious face, at the words that kept echoing in Sarah's head. "Bad men. They're coming." The girl's tiny hand had finally loosened enough for Sarah to see what she'd been clutching. A photograph. Torn and wrinkled, but clear enough in the firelight. A woman's face. Pretty, young, dark hair. And on the back, written in hasty marker, coordinates. Numbers. A location. Sarah's mind raced. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a lost child wandering into the wilderness. This was something else, something deliberate. Something that had put a 6-year-old girl in the snow to die, and was now coming to make sure the job got finished. The engine sounds grew louder. Ranger's growl turned into a bark, sharp, aggressive, protective. And Sarah Chen, who'd spent 18 months hiding from the world, from her guilt, from everything that hurt, felt something old and familiar snap back into place inside her chest. She chambered around into the shotgun. "Not this time," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "Not this kid. Not on my watch." Outside, headlights cut through the storm like knives through cloth, and the first vehicle rolled to a stop 50 yards from her porch. The first knock came soft, almost polite, like someone asking to borrow sugar. Sarah didn't move, didn't breathe, just kept the shotgun trained on the door, while Ranger held position between her and the girl, his body a wall of muscle and loyalty. "Hello?" A man's voice, muffled by wind and wood. "Anyone home? We're looking for someone." Sarah's finger rested on the trigger guard. "Who's asking?" "Name's Derek Hartley. I'm looking for my daughter. Little girl, 6 years old, dark hair. She went missing 2 days ago, and we tracked her coordinates to this area." Sarah glanced down at the unconscious child wrapped in blankets. Coordinates. The photograph. The terror in those brown eyes. "There's nobody here but me and my dog." A pause, long enough to feel calculated. "Ma'am, I know you're trying to help, but Emma needs her father right now. She's got medical conditions, needs medication. Please, I just want to see my little girl." Emma. Now the child had a name. "If she's sick, why isn't she with her mother?" Sarah called back. Another pause, shorter this time. "Her mother isn't well. I have custody. Look, I don't want trouble. I just want my daughter. Can you please open the door so we can talk like reasonable people?" Ranger's growl deepened. He didn't buy it. Neither did Sarah. "Call the police. File a report. When the road's clear, we'll sort this out properly." "The police are already involved, ma'am. I'm working with local authorities. We've been searching for 48 hours in a blizzard. Please." Something in his voice shifted on that last word, less pleading, more demanding. Sarah had heard that shift before, usually right before someone stopped asking and started taking.
I said call the police. Have them radio me. Until then, you're staying on that porch.
The temperature of the silence changed. Ma'am, I'm trying to be patient here, but you're interfering with a custody situation. If you don't open this door, I'll have to assume you're unlawfully detaining a minor.
And I'll have to assume you're trespassing on private property during a blizzard without proper identification.
Sarah's voice went flat, cold.
You've got 10 seconds to get back in your vehicle before I exercise my Second Amendment rights.
Footsteps retreated, heavy boots on wood, then crunching through snow. But they didn't go far. Sarah heard murmuring, multiple voices conferring, making decisions.
At least 3 people out there, maybe more.
Emma stirred on the floor, a soft whimper escaping her throat.
Sarah couldn't go to her, couldn't turn her back on that door.
Ranger solved the problem by positioning himself directly over the girl, covering her with his body, offering warmth and protection simultaneously. The radio crackled to life. Dispatch again. Sarah, we've got a situation. Man named Derek Hartley contacted us about an hour ago, says his daughter might be in your area. You got eyes on a missing kid?
Sarah kept her voice steady. What can you tell me about Derek Hartley?
Oil worker, clean record. Filed a missing persons report 2 days ago. Says the ex-wife violated custody, took off with the kid. He's cooperating with authorities.
Why? Because he's on my porch with at least 2 other men, in the middle of a blizzard, demanding I hand over a child I found buried in the snow.
Static. Then a different voice, older, rougher. Sheriff Tom Bowen. Sarah? That you? Relief hit her hard enough to make her knees weak. Tom had been Marcus's best friend, had stood at the funeral with tears streaming down his weathered face, had checked on her once a month for 18 months, even when she didn't answer.
Tom, thank God.
Talk to me. What's going on?
I've got a little girl here, severe hypothermia, unconscious. Ranger found her buried about 200 yards from my cabin. She woke up for maybe 10 seconds and said 2 words, bad men. Now, someone claiming to be her father is outside with multiple vehicles and won't leave.
She heard Tom's sharp intake of breath. You armed?
Yes.
Good. Stay that way. Don't open that door. I'm getting on the snowmobile right now, but it's going to take me time to reach you in this weather. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
Sarah's hands steadied on the shotgun.
Tom, something's wrong here. This doesn't feel like a custody dispute.
Trust your gut. You've kept people alive before. Keep this one alive until I get there. The radio went dead just as something metallic scraped against the window frame. Sarah's head snapped toward the sound. A shadow moved past the glass. Someone circling the cabin, testing entry points.
Back away from the window,
Sarah shouted.
I will shoot.
The shadow paused, then kept moving. They were assessing the structure, looking for weaknesses. These weren't frantic parents. These were people executing a plan. Ranger barked once, sharp and commanding, his eyes tracking the shadow's movement from inside. Emma's breathing hitched, faster now, like she was surfacing from whatever dark place shock had pulled her into.
Please.
Emma's voice came out raspy, desperate.
Please don't let them take me.
Sarah's heart cracked. She couldn't go to the girl, couldn't offer comfort, couldn't do anything but stand guard between this child and whatever waited outside in the storm.
Nobody's taking you anywhere, Emma. I promise.
My mom.
Emma started crying, soft and broken.
They hurt my mom.
The words hit Sarah like a fist.
Who hurt your mom?
Daddy's friends. They came to our house. Mommy told me to run, said to hide, said to find the lady with the brave dog on the mountain. She showed me your picture. She said you'd keep me safe.
Sarah's mind reeled. Rebecca Hartley knew who she was? Had planned this? Had deliberately left her daughter near Sarah's cabin, banking on Ranger's instincts and Sarah's inability to turn away from someone in danger.
Emma, where's your mom now? I don't know. She said she had to hide.
Said she had papers that would stop the bad men, but they found out, and Emma's voice dissolved into sobs. A loud crack split the air, not gunfire, ice breaking. No, the generator. Someone had sabotaged the generator. The cabin lights flickered once, twice, then died. Only the fireplace remained, casting wild shadows across the walls. Sarah's blood ran cold. They were cutting her off. No power meant no heat except the fire. No heat meant Emma's condition could deteriorate fast.
That's real cute, Sarah muttered. Real professional. Ranger's ears swiveled toward the back of the cabin. His body tensed. Another sound, this one at the back door. Someone testing the lock. Sarah had to make a choice. Guard the front or guard the back. 2 entry points, 1 woman, 1 dog. She chose the front. Ranger, back door, watch. Ranger moved immediately, positioning himself at the back door with the same lethal stillness he'd shown on 100 search operations.
If anyone tried to come through that door, they'd lose whatever body part came through first. Sarah returned her attention to the front just as the main door shuttered. Not a knock, a kick, hard enough to make the frame groan. "Last chance, ma'am." Derek's voice had lost all pretense of politeness. "Open the door, or we open it for you."
You kick that door in, you're committing breaking and entering on federal land.
Sarah's voice could have cut glass. "Try me." Another kick. The frame splintered slightly. These weren't hollow threats. Emma screamed, Ranger barked, and Sarah made a decision that went against every tactical instinct she'd ever learned. She fired a warning shot through the roof. The blast was deafening in the enclosed space. The recoil kicked against her shoulder. Smoke and noise filled the cabin. And outside, the world went completely silent. "Next one goes through the door," Sarah called out. "Your choice." For 30 seconds, nothing. Just the wind, just the fire crackling. Just Emma's terrified breathing and Ranger's low, continuous growl. Then Derek's voice again, but different now. Colder, stripped of pretense. "You don't know what you're involved in. You don't know who you're protecting her from. That kid's mother stole something that doesn't belong to her, and now there are people with resources who want it back. Big people. People who don't take no for an answer. Sounds like a legal problem. Get a lawyer." Lawyers don't fix what her mother broke. That woman has evidence that could destroy careers, end contracts, put very important people in federal prison. She was supposed to hand it over. Instead, she ran. Used her kid as insurance. You think I want this? You think I want my daughter freezing in the snow? You're the one who put her there. The words came out before Sarah could stop them, and the silence that followed felt like the moment before lightning strikes. You have no idea what you're talking about. Derek's voice shook with something. Anger, maybe, or desperation. Emma wasn't supposed to be found. Nobody lives out here. Nobody should have heard her. But your damn dog! He stopped, regaining control. It doesn't matter now. You saved her, fine. But she's still my daughter, and I'm still taking her home. Over my dead body. If that's what it takes. The headlights outside suddenly blazed brighter, positioning to shine directly through Sarah's windows. Blinding white light flooded the cabin.
Sarah threw her arm up to shield her eyes, vision exploding into spots and shadows. Ranger barked furiously. Emma screamed again. And Sarah heard it, the sound of the back door lock being picked. She spun, raising the shotgun, but the light had destroyed her night vision. Everything was blazing white and impenetrable shadow. She couldn't see clearly, couldn't aim properly. "Ranger, hold position!" The picking sound stopped.
A male voice cursed. Ranger must have gotten close enough to threaten. But they were testing her now, probing her defenses, finding her limitations.
"You're alone," Derek called out. "You're one woman in a cabin with no power, no backup, and no way out. Sheriff's at least 4 hours away in this storm. You can't hold out that long. Be smart. Give me my daughter. Walk away from this." Sarah's mind raced. He was right about the tactical situation. She was outmanned, outpositioned, and outgunned. In any normal scenario, she'd negotiate, fall back, wait for reinforcements. But Emma wasn't a tactical situation. Emma was a child who'd been buried alive in the snow, who'd whispered about bad men with the last of her strength, who'd been left to die by her own father because her mother had tried to do the right thing. And Sarah was done walking away from people who needed her. "Counteroffer," Sarah said.
"You leave now. I don't tell the FBI that you just admitted to attempted murder of a minor and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Because that's what you did, Derek. You confessed. And I'm recording every word." She wasn't recording, but he didn't know that. The silence stretched so long, Sarah thought maybe he'd actually believed her. Then he laughed, cold, bitter, exhausted. "You're bluffing. And even if you're not, it doesn't matter. The people I work for own judges. They own prosecutors. They own enough of the system that your recording would disappear before it ever saw a courtroom. This isn't a movie. The good guys don't always win just because they're good." "Maybe not," Sarah said. "But the bad guys don't always win just because they're connected." Another long pause. Then Derek's voice, quieter now, almost sad. "I didn't want this. Emma's my daughter. I love her. But her mother made choices that forced my hand. I've got debts, obligations, people who will kill me if I don't deliver. You think you're the hero here? You're just postponing the inevitable. If I don't bring Emma back, they'll send someone else, someone worse, someone who won't try talking first. Then you better hope Sheriff Bowen gets here before your friends get impatient. Sheriff Bowen's the one who told me where to find you." The words hit Sarah like ice water. She almost didn't believe them. Tom had been Marcus's friend. Tom had checked on her. Tom had... No, that didn't make sense. Tom's voice on the radio had been genuine, concerned. Hadn't it? "You're lying." "Am I? Ask yourself how I knew exactly where to look. How I knew you had a rescue dog. How I knew you'd be alone out here with no witnesses. Small towns talk, Sarah. Especially when there's money involved. Your sheriff friend's got medical bills from his wife's cancer treatment. 5 years of chemo and hospital stays. That kind of debt makes people flexible." Sarah's hands started shaking. Not from fear. From rage so pure it felt like fire in her veins. "If Tom sold me out, why did he tell me not to open the door?" "Because he's still pretending to be the good guy. He'll show up in a few hours, find the cabin empty, file a report saying you and the girl must have tried to run during the storm. Tragic accident, bodies never recovered, clean and neat. Nobody suspects Sheriff Bowen. Nobody suspects me. Life goes on." Emma made a sound, half sob, half whimper.
He's telling the truth. The sheriff came to our house. He helped them.
The bottom dropped out of Sarah's world. She was alone. Completely alone. The backup she'd been counting on was compromised. The timeline she'd been banking on was a lie. And the people outside weren't going to wait 4 hours for permission to kill her. Ranger pressed against her leg, solid and warm and loyal to his core. Emma stared up at her with eyes that held more trust than Sarah deserved.
And Sarah realized something. She'd spent 18 months punishing herself for Marcus's death, for not listening to Ranger's warning, for one mistake that cost her everything. She'd hidden in this cabin like a ghost, haunting her own life, convinced she didn't deserve to save anyone ever again. But Emma hadn't asked her if she deserved this. Emma had just asked her to try.
"Derek," Sarah called out. "You still there?"
"I'm here."
Tell your friends something for me. Tell them I spent 5 years pulling bodies out of avalanches. Tell them I've survived worse storms than this, worse odds than this, worse men than them. And tell them that if they want this child, they're going to have to come through me and my dog to get her.
She lowered her voice, speaking directly to Emma now.
You trust me?
Emma nodded, tears streaming.
Then hold on tight, because we're not dying today.
Sarah moved fast, muscle memory taking over where thought would have been too slow.
She grabbed Emma off the floor, blankets and all, and carried her toward the back bedroom where the walls were thicker and the window sat too high for easy access.
"Ranger, with me!" The dog fell into position instantly, moving ahead to clear the path, checking corners the way he'd been trained. Sarah kicked the bedroom door open and sat Emma on the bed, then shoved the heavy oak dresser against the door with strength she didn't know she still had.
"Stay down, stay quiet," she whispered to Emma. "No matter what you hear, don't make a sound."
Emma nodded, eyes wide and terrified, but trusting. God help her, still trusting. Sarah returned to the main room just as the first window shattered. Glass exploded inward, and a canister rolled across the floor, spewing thick white smoke. Tear gas. They'd brought tear gas to a cabin in the middle of nowhere to extract a 6-year-old child. Sarah's eyes immediately started burning, throat closing.
She dropped low where the air was clearer and scrambled back toward the bedroom, pulling her shirt over her nose and mouth. Ranger pressed against her leg, guiding her through the smoke like he'd done in a dozen disaster scenarios. They made it into the bedroom, and Sarah slammed the door shut, shoving towels along the bottom edge to block the gas. Her lungs screamed. Her eyes leaked water. But she could still breathe, still think, still fight.
"They're coming in,"
she rasped to Emma.
"When they do, you hide under that bed, and you don't come out until I say so, understand? What about you? I'll be fine. Ranger will keep you safe."
It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Emma crawled under the bed anyway, because children were good at believing adults, even when adults didn't believe themselves. Sarah positioned herself behind the dresser with the shotgun braced, Ranger at her side.
If they wanted Emma, they'd have to come through this door, through this barricade, through a woman who'd already lost everything that mattered and had nothing left to lose. The cabin's main door crashed open. Boots hit the floor. Multiple sets, moving tactically, spreading out to clear the space. "She's barricaded in the back," someone called out. Young voice, nervous, not Derek. "Then get her out." Derek's voice, closer now. He was inside. "We don't have time for this. Every minute we waste, the storm gets worse and our window closes." "You want to go first?" the young voice shot back. "She's got a shotgun and a trained attack dog.
I didn't sign up to get my face ripped off for this. You signed up for whatever I tell you to sign up for. Now move. Footsteps approached the bedroom. Slow, cautious. Sarah counted them. 3 sets. 3 men between her and the only exit. She couldn't win this by force. She had to be smarter. Derek, she called out. Let's talk.
The footsteps stopped. We're past talking.
No, we're not. You want Emma. I want to live. There's got to be a deal here. A pause. She could almost hear him thinking. What kind of deal? You said Rebecca has evidence, documents that could hurt your bosses. You give me safe passage out of here. I help you find Rebecca. I've got tracking skills, resources, connections. You need her more than you need the kid, right? Another pause. Longer this time. How do I know you're not bluffing? Because I'm a survivor, Derek. Same as you. And survivors don't die for other people's children when there's another way out. The words tasted like poison in her mouth. She felt Emma flinch under the bed, felt Ranger's eyes on her face like he was trying to understand what she was doing. Let me see Emma first, Derek said. Let me confirm she's okay. Then we talk terms. You think I'm stupid? You see Emma, you grab her and shoot me.
I think you're smart enough to know you can't hold out forever. That bedroom's got 1 window and 3 walls. You're trapped. We can wait you out, or we can end this fast. Your choice. Sarah's mind raced. He was right about the tactical situation, but he was also stalling, and people only stalled when they were waiting for something. Reinforcements? A change in weather? She had to push him off balance.
Fine. You want to see her? I'll show you.
She grabbed Emma's jacket off the floor and threw it out into the hallway through the 6-inch gap at the top of the dresser. The jacket hit the floor with a soft thump.
That's her coat. Still warm. She's alive. Now back off and let me think.
That's not good enough.
It's all you're getting until I see a way out of this that doesn't end with me dead.
A new voice cut in, older and harder than the others. Derek, we're out of time. The storm's getting worse and we've got a 3-hour drive back. Either we finish this now or we leave empty-handed. We're not leaving empty-handed, Derek snapped. My daughter is 10 feet away. Your daughter is the least of our problems. We need that evidence and we need the woman who has it. This Sarah Chen is nobody. Kill her, grab the kid, burn the cabin. Make it look like an accident. Sarah's blood went cold. The voice belonged to someone who'd done this before. Someone who saw murder as a checklist item.
Carl, I'm not killing anyone in front of my daughter. Then don't let her watch. You think Arctic Energy is paying us to be nice? You think those contracts we're protecting are worth less than your conscience? Grow up.
Arctic Energy. The name hit Sarah like a sledgehammer. Emma's mother wasn't just any lawyer. She was an indigenous rights lawyer who'd been fighting pipeline projects. Sarah had seen the news reports months ago. Protests over drilling permits on tribal lands, lawsuits claiming environmental violations and bribery. This wasn't about custody. This was about silencing witnesses.
Emma,
Sarah whispered so quietly only the girl could hear.
The coordinates on that photograph. Where do they lead?
Emma's voice came from under the bed, small and scared.
Mommy's office, in Anchorage. She said there's a safe deposit box.
What's in the box?
Papers, recordings. She said they prove the oil company paid people to lie about the land surveys.
Sarah's chest tightened. Rebecca Hartley had evidence of fraud that could invalidate billions in contracts, expose corruption at the highest levels, and send executives to prison. And she'd hidden that evidence in a safe deposit box only her daughter could access. That's why they needed Emma alive. The box required 2 keys: biometric signature, parental authorization. Kill Emma, They'd never get the evidence.
But take Emma, force Rebecca to surface. They could eliminate both problems at once. How long are we supposed to wait? Carl's voice again, impatient. Every minute we sit here is another minute that woman's making copies, sending files to journalists. This was supposed to be clean. It will be clean, Derek said, but his voice shook. Then prove it. Open that door, or I will. Footsteps approached, heavy and purposeful. Sarah raised the shotgun. Ranger's growl went from low to lethal. And Emma started crying under the bed. Quiet, desperate sobs that broke Sarah's heart into pieces. The doorknob turned. The door pressed against the dresser. Someone was testing the barricade's strength. Last chance, Sarah, Derek called. Send Emma out, and I promise we'll let you go.
Liar,
Emma whispered from under the bed.
He's lying. He always lies.
Sarah believed her. She'd heard enough liars in her career to recognize the cadence.
Can't do it, Derek.
Then I'm sorry. A massive impact hit the door. The dresser scraped back an inch. Another impact. The wood splintered. They were using something heavy as a battering ram. Sarah aimed at the center of the door and fired. The blast punched a hole through the wood. Someone screamed. The battering stopped.
She shot me! That crazy bitch shot me!
It's your shoulder, you're fine, Carl's voice, cold as ice. Use the other arm.
They started ramming again. The dresser scraped back another inch. Another. Sarah pumped the shotgun, chambered another round. She had maybe 4 shots left. 4 shots against 3 armed men who were willing to kill a child to cover their crimes. Ranger barked once, sharp and insistent. He was trying to tell her something. His eyes locked on the window, then back to her. The window sat 7 feet off the ground, too high for easy access, but not impossible. If they could get Emma out the window while Derek's team was focused on the door, the dresser slammed back another foot. An arm reached through the gap, groping for the doorknob. Sarah kicked it hard enough to hear bones crack. The arm withdrew with a howl of pain.
Emma, can you climb? I think so. Ranger's going to boost you up to that window. You're going to open it and crawl out. Then you're going to run. Not toward the road, toward the woods. Head north until you find the creek, then follow it downstream. You understand? What about you? I'll be right behind you.
Another lie. Emma was small and fast. Sarah could buy her maybe 3 minutes by holding the door. 3 minutes for Emma to disappear into the storm. It wasn't much, but it was something. The door crashed open. The dresser toppled sideways. Derek stood in the opening with 2 other men behind him, all 3 holding weapons. His face was flushed, eyes desperate and furious all at once.
Don't, Sarah said, shotgun steady on his chest. Don't make me do this.
You won't shoot, not in front of Emma. He was wrong. Sarah had shot people before when she had to. But Derek was also betting correctly that she'd hesitate, that maternal instinct would interfere with tactical necessity, that good people couldn't flip the switch to lethal the way bad people could. He stepped into the room. Sarah didn't shoot his chest. She shot the floor 6 inches from his feet. The blast was deafening. Derek jumped back, cursing. His men scattered, and in that 2-second window, Sarah grabbed Emma from under the bed and threw her toward Ranger.
Go, now!
Ranger understood instantly. He positioned himself under the window. Emma climbed onto his back, stretched up, managed to grip the windowsill. She was halfway out when Derek lunged forward and grabbed Sarah's arm, yanking the shotgun away.
Ranger, protect!
Sarah screamed.
The dog's training overrode everything else.
He launched himself at Derek with the full force of 70 pounds of muscle and fury and absolute loyalty. His jaws locked onto Derek's arm. Derek screamed. The shotgun clattered to the floor. Sarah didn't reach for it. She reached for Emma, who was dangling half in and half out of the window, struggling to pull herself through.
"I've got you,"
Sarah gasped, hands under Emma's arms, lifting her up and out.
"Run, baby. Run, and don't look back."
Emma disappeared into the blizzard. Sarah heard her small feet hit the snow, heard her running, heard Derek screaming at his men to go after her. Then Carl's gun pressed against the back of Sarah's head. "Call off the dog, or I paint this room with your brains." Sarah's hands rose slowly.
"Ranger, release."
Ranger released Derek's arm, but didn't back down. He stayed between Sarah and the men, hackles raised, teeth bared, ready to die protecting her the way he'd been ready to die protecting every person they'd ever pulled from the snow. Dut clutched his bleeding arm, face twisted in pain and rage. "You just killed your daughter, you know that? She's 6 years old in a blizzard with no coat and no gear. She'll be dead in an hour. She's got a better chance out there than in here with you. Carl, go after her. Now." Carl shook his head. "I'm not chasing a kid through a whiteout. I can't see 10 feet in front of my face out there." "Then we wait until the storm clears and track her. By then she could be anywhere. We've lost her." Derek turned on Sarah with such sudden violence that even Ranger flinched. "Where would she go? Where did you tell her to go?" "Somewhere you'll never find her." He hit her, open palm across the face, hard enough to snap her head sideways and fill her mouth with the copper taste of blood. Ranger lunged, but Carl's gun swung toward the dog.
"Shoot that animal, and you'll have to shoot me too,"
Sarah said through split lips. "And good luck explaining 2 bodies and a missing child to Sheriff Bowen."
"Bowen's bought and paid for," Carl said. "He'll say whatever we tell him to say."
"Maybe. But can you afford to bet your entire operation on it? Can you afford the FBI investigation when a decorated search and rescue handler turns up dead? I've got friends in federal law enforcement, people who'll ask questions if I disappear." It was a bluff, but Carl's hesitation told her it landed. Derek paced the small room like a caged animal, leaving bloody footprints.
"We can't leave without the kid. If we don't deliver her, Rebecca won't deal. If Rebecca doesn't deal, the evidence goes public. If the evidence goes public, we all go to prison."
"Then it sounds like you've got a problem," Sarah said. The younger man who'd been shot in the shoulder spoke up, voice tight with pain.
"Derek, we need to get out of here. My arm's bleeding bad, and the storm's getting worse."
"We stay much longer, we won't make it back to the vehicles." Derek looked at Sarah with something that might have been respect if it wasn't buried under so much hatred. "You're going to regret this." "I've regretted a lot of things in my life. Saving a child won't be one of them." They left, not because they wanted to, but because the storm made staying impossible, and because Sarah had created enough doubt about the consequences. They backed out of the room, guns trained on her and Ranger, then fled into the night, engines roaring to life and headlights cutting through white chaos. Sarah collapsed against the wall, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Ranger pressed against her immediately, warm and solid and alive. She wrapped her arms around his neck and sobbed into his fur, the way she'd sobbed after Marcus died. But this time it wasn't grief. It was terror and relief and desperate hope, all tangled together. Emma was out there, 6 years old, in a killing storm with no coat and no protection except instructions shouted through a doorway. Sarah had sent her out there, had chosen that over letting Derek take her, had gambled a child's life on the possibility that freezing was better than whatever Derek's people had planned. "Please," Sarah whispered to the wind, to God, to whatever force had sent Ranger digging through snow to find that small buried body.
Please let her make it. Please don't let me be wrong.
Ranger pulled away from her embrace and moved to the broken window. He sniffed the air, head tilted, ears working. Then he looked back at Sarah with eyes that held no doubt. He could find her. He knew Emma's scent, knew which direction she'd run. The storm that made it impossible for Derek's people to track her was nothing to a dog who'd found bodies buried under 12 feet of avalanche debris. Sarah stood on shaking legs.
You know where she is?
Ranger's tail moved once. Yes.
Then let's go get her.
She grabbed what gear she could salvage, clipped the line to Ranger's vest, and walked back into the blizzard that had started this whole nightmare. But this time she wasn't following blindly. She was following the dog who'd never once led her wrong, who'd tried to warn her about Marcus, and whom she hadn't trusted, who'd found Emma when no one else could. This time, Sarah Chen was listening. The cold hit Sarah like a physical blow the second she stepped outside. -20 felt like -50 when wind drove it through every gap in her clothing, every exposed inch of skin. Her lungs seized. Her eyes watered instantly, tears freezing on her cheeks before she could blink them away. Ranger didn't hesitate. His nose dropped to the snow, and he pulled forward with such certainty that Sarah's heart lurched with desperate hope. He had Emma's scent. He knew where she'd gone. They moved into the storm at a pace that would have been suicide for anyone else.
Sarah had done enough winter rescues to know the rules. Stay visible, stay warm, stay rational. She was breaking all three. Visibility was maybe 10 feet, warmth was a memory, and rational people didn't chase children into blizzards while men with guns might circle back at any moment. But Ranger moved like he could see through the white chaos, like Emma was broadcasting a signal only he could receive. His body cut through the drifts with muscular efficiency, and Sarah followed, one hand on the line connecting them, the other clutching her gear.
Emma!
Sarah shouted into the wind.
Emma! Can you hear me?
The storm swallowed her voice, gave nothing back. Ranger veered left, angling away from the cabin toward the tree line where the pines grew thick enough to offer some shelter. Smart girl. Emma had listened. She'd headed for cover instead of open ground. Sarah's legs burned. Her lungs screamed. Every breath felt like inhaling broken glass.
She'd been soft for 18 months, hiding in that cabin, letting her body forget what it meant to push past pain. Now her muscles were remembering, the hard way. They reached the trees, and the wind's fury lessened just enough for Sarah to hear her own gasping breath. Ranger paused, nose working overtime, then barked once, sharp, insistent. He'd found something. Sarah crashed through the undergrowth and saw it, a small depression in the snow where someone had crouched, then fallen, then crawled. The tracks were already filling in, but fresh enough to still hold shape. Emma had made it this far.
How long ago?
Sarah asked Ranger like he could answer. Is she still moving? Ranger surged forward again. The tracks led deeper into the trees, weaving between trunks, following some internal logic Sarah couldn't see, but Emma must have understood. Stay near cover, keep moving. Don't stop or you'll freeze. Sarah's mind supplied terrible calculations. 6-year-old child, minimal body fat, no coat, exerting energy in sub-zero temperatures. Hypothermia would set in fast. 15 minutes, maybe 20 before confusion started, 30 before unconsciousness, an hour before. No, she wouldn't think it. Emma was tough. She'd survived being buried alive. She'd survived her father's betrayal. She could survive this. Ranger stopped so suddenly Sarah almost fell over him. He stood perfectly still, ears forward, body tense. Then he whined, soft, distressed, the sound he made when he found someone who wasn't moving.
No.
Sarah's voice broke.
No, please no.
She pushed past Ranger and saw Emma curled at the base of a massive pine, wedged into a hollow where roots created a small cave. The girl's skin was gray. Her lips were blue. Her eyes were closed. She wasn't moving. Sarah drops to her knees, hands already checking for vitals. Pulse. There. Faint, but there. Breathing. Shallow, but present. Core temperature dangerously low, but not terminal. Not yet. Emma, can you hear me? Emma, wake up! No response. The girl was deep in hypothermic shutdown, body conserving heat by shutting down non-essential systems. Sarah had maybe 10 minutes before those essential systems started failing too. She stripped off her own parka and wrapped Emma in it, then pulled heat packs from her emergency kit and activated them with shaking hands. One against Emma's chest, one at the back of her neck, one between her small palms. Then Sarah pulled the girl against her own body, sharing heat the way she'd been taught, letting her warmth become Emma's warmth.
Stay with me, Sarah whispered. Your mom's waiting for you. Ranger found you twice now, and he's not going to let you die. You hear me? You don't get to die.
Ranger pressed against them both, adding his body heat to the equation. His fur trapped warmth. His presence offered comfort. His steady breathing reminded Sarah that animals had survived in conditions worse than this for millions of years. They just needed time. But time was the one thing Sarah didn't have. Derek and his people would realize the storm was letting up, would realize they could come back, would realize Sarah and Emma were vulnerable out here with no shelter and no backup. Sarah's radio crackled. She'd forgotten she was still wearing it. Sheriff Bowen's voice came through, distorted by static but recognizable. Sarah! Sarah, you there? Her hand hovered over the radio. Derek had said Bowen was bought, that he'd helped them, that he was part of this. But what if Derek had lied? What if he'd been trying to isolate Sarah, make her believe she was alone so she'd panic and make mistakes? Tom? Sarah kept her voice neutral.
I'm here.
Thank God. Listen to me, Derek Hartley, and 2 other men just passed my position, heading away from your location at high speed. One of them's bleeding. What happened? They tried to take Emma. I stopped them. A long pause. Emma's the missing Hartley girl? She's Rebecca Hartley's daughter. Derek tried to kill her. He's working for Arctic Energy, covering up evidence of fraud and corruption. Tom, if you're part of this, Sarah, what are you talking about? Derek said you told him where to find me. Said you're on their payroll because of your wife's medical bills. The silence that followed felt like falling. When Bowen spoke again, his voice was tight with fury. My wife's medical bills are paid by insurance and savings. I've never taken a bribe in 30 years of law enforcement, and I sure as hell didn't tell Derek Hartley anything. I came out here to help you. Relief and shame hit Sarah simultaneously. I'm sorry. I didn't know who to trust. Trust me now. Where are you? North tree line, maybe a quarter mile from the cabin. Emma's hypothermic. I need medical help, and I need protection in case Derek comes back. I'm 20 minutes out. Can you hold that long? Sarah looked at Emma's gray face, at Ranger's worried eyes, at her own hands shaking from cold and adrenaline crash. I'll hold. Sarah. Bowen's voice softened. Marcus would be proud of you. The words hit harder than the cold. Sarah's throat closed. Just get here, Tom. She clicked off the radio and focused on keeping Emma alive. rubbing the girl's hands, talking to her, telling her stories about Ranger's greatest rescues, about the time he'd found 3 lost hikers in a snowstorm, about the avalanche victim who'd been buried for 45 minutes and still survived because Ranger wouldn't stop digging.
He saved them all, Sarah whispered. And he's going to save you too. You just have to hold on a little longer.
Emma's eyelids fluttered. Her lips moved. A sound came out. Barely more than breath, but sound nonetheless.
Mom.
Sarah's eyes burned.
Your mom's okay. She's safe. And when you're better, we're going to find her and get her that evidence and put all the bad men in jail where they belong. But you have to stay with me, Emma. You have to fight. Tired. I know, but you can sleep later. Right now, you need to stay awake.
Emma's eyes opened just a crack.
The lady with the brave dog. Mom said you'd save me. Your mom was right. Ranger's the bravest dog I know, and you're the bravest kid I've ever met. Is my dad going to find us?
The question pierced Sarah's heart, because Emma didn't ask if her dad was okay. She asked if he was going to find them. Past tense, hoping. Present tense, fearing.
If he does, Ranger and I will stop him again. I promise.
A new sound cut through the storm. Engine noise, growing louder. Sarah's hand went to the knife at her belt. If Derek had circled back, if this was another assault. But the headlights that emerged from the white weren't the harsh beams of Derek's vehicles. They were the familiar yellows of Bowen's department-issue snowmobile, and behind him rode 2 more sleds carrying people in EMT jackets. Sarah almost wept with relief. Bowen killed the engine and dismounted, moving fast for a man in his 60s. How is she?
Hypothermic. Responsive, but barely. She needs a hospital.
The EMTs took over with practiced efficiency, wrapping Emma in thermal blankets, starting an IV, loading her onto a rescue sled designed for exactly this scenario. One of them, a woman with kind eyes and steady hands, looked at Sarah.
You did good. Another 10 minutes and we'd have lost her.
Sarah wanted to feel proud. Instead, she just felt exhausted.
Will she make it? Kids are tougher than adults in cold situations. Lower body mass means they cool faster, but it also means they warm faster with treatment.
I'd say her chances are good. Good. Not certain. Not guaranteed. But better than dead in the snow. They loaded Emma onto the sled. Ranger positioned himself beside her, refusing to be separated. The EMT smiled.
Guess he's coming with us.
He found her twice, Sarah said.
He's not going to let her out of his sight now.
Bowen pulled Sarah aside while the EMTs worked. I need you to tell me everything, fast. Derek Hartley passed us going 90 miles an hour with a man bleeding in the passenger seat. I called it in, but by the time backup gets here, he'll be long gone. If I'm going to build a case that sticks, I need your statement. Sarah told him. All of it. The coordinates on the photograph, the confession about Arctic energy, the threats, the violence, the systematic attempt to silence Rebecca Hartley and her daughter. Bowen's face grew darker with every sentence. Arctic Energy's got connections all the way to Washington, he said quietly. This won't be easy to prosecute. Rebecca has evidence, documents, recordings, enough to prove fraud in the land surveys. If she's still alive to present them. The words hung between them like ice.
We need to find her before Derek does,
Sarah said.
We? I'm not sitting this out, Tom. That little girl trusted me. Her mother trusted me. I'm seeing this through.
Bowen studied her face for a long moment. Marcus used to say you were stubborn as a mule and twice as strong. I'm starting to see what he meant. Sarah's chest tightened. She hadn't thought about Marcus in hours, hadn't had time. But now, Standing in the snow with Ranger at her side and a child's life hanging in the balance, she felt Marcus's presence like a hand on her shoulder. He'd died because she hadn't listened to Ranger's warning. But Emma was alive because she had. Maybe that was as close to redemption as she was going to get. The EMT called out. "We need to move. Storm's got a gap in it, but it won't last long." They loaded onto the sleds, Emma on the rescue rig, Sarah and Ranger on Bowen's sled, the EMTs on their own machines. The convoy started moving, headlights cutting through thinning snow, engines roaring against wind that was finally starting to ease. Sarah held onto Bowen's shoulders and watched Ranger's silhouette in the sled ahead, watched the way he kept his body positioned protectively over Emma's covered form, and understood something profound. Loyalty wasn't a leash. It wasn't training or commands or conditional affection. It was a choice made every single day to show up, to stay present, to pull someone back from the edge even when it cost you everything. Ranger had chosen Emma, had chosen Sarah, had chosen again and again to be the bridge between death and life. And Sarah had finally learned to trust that choice. They were halfway to Timber Ridge when Sarah's radio crackled again. Different voice this time. Female, urgent, unfamiliar.
This is Rebecca Hartley.
I'm broadcasting on all emergency channels. If anyone can hear me, if anyone has my daughter, please respond. Her name is Emma. She's 6 years old. She has dark hair and brown eyes, and she's wearing a blue coat. Please, if you have her, tell me she's safe. Sarah grabbed the radio so fast she almost dropped it.
Rebecca, this is Sarah Chen. I have Emma. She's alive. She's hypothermic but stable, and we're transporting her to Timber Ridge Memorial Hospital right now. The sound that came back was half sob, half prayer. Thank God. Oh, thank God. Is she hurt? Did they hurt her? She's scared and cold, but she's going to be okay. Where are you? Derek's people are looking for you. I know. I've been moving every few hours. But Sarah, I can't keep running. I need to come in. I need to see my daughter. Then come to the hospital. We'll protect you there. Derek has people everywhere. Sheriff Bowen's on his payroll. I can't. Bowen's clean, Sarah interrupted. Derek lied.
Tom's here with me right now, and he's ready to help. But Rebecca, we need that evidence. We need what you've been hiding, because without it, Derek and Arctic Energy walk free, and this starts all over again. A long pause filled with static and breathing, and the weight of impossible decisions.
Okay,
Rebecca finally said.
Okay. I'm 3 hours out, but I'm coming. Sarah, thank you. Emma told me about you. Showed me your picture from an article about Marcus. I'm sorry for what happened to your husband. I'm sorry I put this on you. But I didn't know where else to turn.
Sarah closed her eyes.
You turned to the right place. We'll keep Emma safe until you get here. I promise.
The radio went silent. Bowen glanced back over his shoulder. You just made a promise to a woman whose daughter nearly died because of choices she made.
Her choices saved thousands of indigenous people from having their land stolen through fraud,
Sarah shot back. I think I can live with keeping her daughter alive. Even if it means going up against one of the biggest corporations in Alaska? Especially then. Bowen actually smiled. Marcus definitely married the right woman. The convoy pushed through the last of the storm and into the relative calm beyond. The lights of Timber Ridge appeared in the distance, small and steady and impossibly welcome. Emma was going to live. Rebecca was coming. Derek and his people were running. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. There would be questions, investigations, legal battles that would take months or years to resolve. Arctic Energy wouldn't go down without a fight. Derek would lawyer up. Sheriff Bowen would face scrutiny for letting it get this far. But right now, in this moment, with Ranger's steady presence ahead and the hospital's lights growing closer, Sarah allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in 18 months. Purpose. Not the hollow purpose of survival, not the guilty purpose of punishment. Real purpose. The kind that came from standing between a child and the people who wanted to hurt her. The kind that came from trusting a dog who'd never once led her astray. The kind that Marcus had died teaching her to recognize. They pulled into the hospital's emergency entrance. Staff rushed out with a gurney. Emma was transferred with practiced speed, Ranger following close enough to be in the way, but steady enough that nobody asked him to leave. Sarah dismounted, and her legs almost gave out. Adrenaline crash. She'd been running on fumes and fury for so long that her body had forgotten how to function on anything else. Bowen caught her before she fell. Easy. When's the last time you ate?
This morning? Maybe yesterday. I don't remember.
Hospital cafeteria. Now. That's an order. But Sarah couldn't leave. Not yet. She followed the gurney inside, watched as they wheeled Emma into a treatment room, watched as doctors and nurses swarmed with equipment and questions and the efficient chaos of emergency medicine. Emma's eyes opened one more time as they transferred her to the hospital bed. She searched the room, found Sarah, found Ranger. Her hand lifted slightly, reaching, needing. Sarah stepped forward and took that small hand in both of hers.
I'm here. Ranger's here. Your mom's coming. You're safe now, Emma. I promise you're safe.
Emma's lips moved.
Thank you.
Then the medical team took over, and Sarah had to step back, had to let them work, had to trust that she'd done enough. Ranger pressed against her leg. His tail moved slowly. Job done. Mission complete. Another life saved by instinct, loyalty, and a woman who'd finally learned to listen. Sarah sank into a waiting room chair and put her head in her hands. Her whole body shook. 18 months of grief and guilt and self-imposed exile were draining out of her all at once, leaving her hollow and raw and strangely lighter. Marcus was gone. That wouldn't change. But Emma was alive. And maybe, just maybe, that was Sarah's second chance at doing things right. Ranger rested his head on her knee. Sarah's hand found his ears, scratching the way he liked, and whispered the words she should have said 18 months ago. Good boy. You're such a good boy. Rebecca Hartley arrived at the hospital 3 hours later, looking like she'd aged a decade in 48 hours. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a hasty knot, clothes wrinkled and mismatched like she'd grabbed whatever was closest. But her spine was straight, her jaw set, and when she walked through those emergency room doors, she moved like a woman who'd stopped running and started fighting. Sarah was still in the waiting room, Ranger at her feet, when Rebecca entered. Their eyes met across the sterile space, and something wordless passed between them. Recognition, gratitude, and the particular understanding that exists between women who've both stood between children and monsters.
Where is she?
Rebecca's voice shook but held.
Treatment room 2. They're warming her slowly, monitoring vitals. Doctor said she'll recover fully, but it'll take time.
Rebecca's knees buckled slightly. Sarah caught her elbow, steadied her.
Can I see her? They're only allowing family right now. I'm her mother. I know. But Derek filed custody papers claiming you're unstable. Until we prove otherwise, the hospital has to proceed carefully.
Rebecca's face went hard.
He tried to kill her. He buried my daughter in the snow and left her to die. And I'm the one who has to prove I'm fit to see her?
Welcome to the system, Sarah said quietly. But Sheriff Bowen's working on it. He's getting statements, building a case. You just need to give him what you've got.
Rebecca looked at Sarah with eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little.
How do I know you're not working with Derek? How do I know this isn't a trap?
It was a fair question, smart question. Sarah respected her for asking it.
You don't, but your daughter does. Emma told me you said to find the lady with the brave dog on the mountain. Well, we found her. And she saved your kid, twice. So either you trust that, or you keep running until Derek finds you and finishes what he started.
Rebecca's shoulders sagged. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small waterproof bag. Inside was a USB drive, several folded documents, and a micro SD card.
Land survey reports, Rebecca said. The real ones, not the doctored versions Arctic Energy submitted to the Tribal Council. They show contaminated groundwater, unstable permafrost, and drilling sites that directly violate treaty boundaries.
Plus audio recordings of executives discussing how to bribe officials and intimidate activists. Everything needed to void their permits and open criminal investigations. Sarah took the bag carefully.
This is what people tried to kill your daughter for.
This is what will put them in prison for the next 20 years. Sheriff Bowen appeared from the hallway, moving faster than his age suggested. Rebecca Hartley? Rebecca tensed.
That depends on who's asking.
Tom Bowen. I've been sheriff of this county for 30 years, and I've never taken a bribe, never looked the other way, and never let corporate money dictate justice. Your ex-husband told Sarah I'm on Arctic Energy's payroll. That's a lie. What I am is angry as hell that this happened in my jurisdiction.
He held out his hand.
Rebecca hesitated, then shook it. I need your statement, Bowen continued. Everything from the beginning. And I need that evidence secured in federal custody before someone decides to make it disappear.
I'll give you my statement, but the evidence stays with me until I see my daughter and confirm she's safe.
Ma'am, with respect,
Sheriff. I've spent 2 days evading men who want me dead. I'm not handing over the only leverage I have until I know Emma's actually protected and not about to be released to Derek on some technicality.
Bowen looked at Sarah. Sarah shrugged.
She's not wrong.
Fine, but you're not leaving this hospital without a protective detail. I've got 2 deputies outside and more on the way. Nobody gets near Emma or you without going through them first.
A doctor emerged from the treatment room, young, efficient, with tired eyes that had seen too many emergencies. Mrs. Hartley, your daughter's asking for you. Rebecca moved before anyone could stop her.
She was through that door so fast it was like she'd teleported, and then Sarah heard it through the walls.
A mother's sob, and a child's voice saying, "Mommy," with such relief it made Sarah's chest crack open. Ranger's ears perked up. He stood, tail wagging slowly, as if he understood that something important had just been made whole. Sarah sank back into her chair, exhausted beyond words. Bowen sat beside her.
"You look like hell," he said conversationally.
I feel worse than I look. Marcus would have done the same thing. Probably would have gotten himself killed in the process, but he would have done it. Sarah's throat tightened. He tried to warn me about that snow shelf. Ranger tried to warn me. I didn't listen. And you've punished yourself for 18 months because of it. Bowen's voice gentled. But Sarah, that dog tried to warn Marcus, too, multiple times. Marcus chose not to listen. That wasn't your failure. That was his choice. The words hit like a sledgehammer.
Sarah had spent so long blaming herself that she'd forgotten Marcus had agency, had forgotten he'd made the decision to keep going despite Ranger's alerts, had overridden Sarah's caution because he'd wanted to prove something, or save time, or just been too stubborn to turn back.
I should have insisted,
Sarah whispered.
and he should have listened. But you can't carry someone else's choices for the rest of your life. Trust me, I've tried. Doesn't work.
Sarah looked at him.
Is that why you check on me every month?
I check on you because you're family, and because I promised Marcus I'd look after you if anything happened. Didn't expect you to make it this hard by hiding in the woods like a hermit. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled.
Sorry.
Don't apologize. Just stop punishing yourself. Emma's alive because you listened to your dog this time. That counts for something.
It counted for everything.
The next 6 hours moved in controlled chaos. FBI agents arrived from Anchorage, serious people in dark suits, who took Rebecca's statement and secured the evidence with the kind of efficiency that made bureaucracy look graceful. Derek Hartley was picked up at the Canadian border, trying to cross with false identification. His 2 accomplices were arrested at a motel outside Fairbanks. Carl, the man who'd pressed a gun to Sarah's head, turned himself in with a lawyer and immediately started negotiating a plea deal in exchange for testimony against Arctic Energy executives. Emma was moved to a regular room once her core temperature stabilized. Rebecca didn't leave her side. Neither did Ranger. The hospital tried to enforce their no dogs policy exactly once, took one look at the Belgian Malinois who'd saved the girl's life twice, and quietly revised their rules. Sarah stayed too, not because she was needed, but because she couldn't quite make herself leave. Every time she stood to go, she'd look through Emma's room window and see that small face against white pillows, see Rebecca holding her daughter's hand like she'd never let go, and Sarah would sit back down. She'd saved this child. Against impossible odds, against armed men, against a storm that should have killed them both. She'd saved her. And somehow, in saving Emma, Sarah had saved herself. 2 days later, Emma was discharged. Color back in her cheeks, strength returning to her small body. She walked out holding her mother's hand, then stopped when she saw Sarah and Ranger waiting in the corridor.
Hi,
Emma said shyly.
Hi yourself.
Sarah knelt down to Emma's level.
How are you feeling? Better. The doctor said I'm very brave.
The doctors are right. Emma looked at Ranger, who sat perfectly still with his tail moving slowly back and forth.
Can I pet him?
He'd be offended if you didn't. Emma approached carefully and buried her small hands in Ranger's thick fur. The dog leaned into her touch, eyes soft, as gentle with this fragile child as he'd been fierce protecting her.
Thank you for finding me,
Emma whispered.
Mom says you're a hero.
Ranger's the hero. I just followed.
Mom says that's what heroes do. They follow when other people would stop.
Sarah's eyes burned. Rebecca stepped forward, one hand still holding Emma's.
I don't know how to thank you,
Rebecca said.
I put my daughter's life in your hands, and you came through. Most people would have called the police and walked away.
Most people don't have Ranger.
Most people don't have your courage either.
Rebecca paused.
The FBI says Derek and his associates are facing conspiracy charges, attempted murder, fraud, corruption. The evidence we provided is enough to void Arctic Energy's permits and open criminal investigations into their executives. It's going to be a long fight, but we're going to win.
Good.
And it's because of you.
If Emma had died out there, if Derek had succeeded, none of this would have happened. Those executives would still be stealing land, poisoning water, intimidating people into silence. Sarah shook her head.
I just found a kid in the snow. You're the one who stood up to them in the first place. You're the one who risked everything to expose them.
And I'm the one who almost got my daughter killed doing it. Rebecca's voice cracked.
I keep thinking about her buried in that snow, alone and scared, and
She wasn't alone, Sarah interrupted gently.
Ranger found her, and she knew you'd sent help. She told me you said to find the lady with the brave dog on the mountain. That's not a mother who abandoned her child. That's a mother who saved her.
Rebecca's face crumpled. Emma wrapped her small arms around her mother's waist.
It's okay, Mommy. We're safe now.
And they were. Finally, actually safe. Sarah stood to leave, but Emma's voice stopped her.
Will we see you again?
Sarah looked at this brave little girl who'd survived her father's betrayal, survived hypothermia twice, survived being used as leverage in a corporate conspiracy.
Do you want to?
Emma nodded vigorously.
Can you teach me about Ranger? About how he finds people?
Sarah glanced at Rebecca, who smiled through tears.
We're staying in Timber Ridge for a while. Witness protection until the trials. If you're willing to visit, Emma would love it.
Something warm unfurled in Sarah's chest. Not quite happiness, too fragile for that. But maybe the beginning of it. The first shoots of green after a long winter.
I'd like that.
They exchanged numbers, made loose plans. Sarah walked out of the hospital with Ranger at her side, and for the first time in 18 months, the future felt like something other than punishment. Sheriff Bowen caught up with her in the parking lot. Where are you headed?
Home, I guess. Back to the cabin.
The cabin that got shot up, gassed, and broken into? That's the one. Bowen handed her a business card. Local contractor, owes me a favor. He'll get your place fixed up, no charge. Consider it thanks from the department for doing our job better than we did. Sarah took the card.
Thanks, Tom.
One more thing. Bowen's expression turned serious. The FBI wants to talk to you about consulting work. Search and rescue operations in Alaska and Northern Territories. They need people with your experience, and apparently your reputation's better than you thought.
I'm retired.
You just pulled off a solo rescue operation that saved the child's life and broke open a multi-million-dollar corruption case. That's not retirement, Sarah. That's you refusing to admit you're still one of the best. Sarah looked at Ranger, who gazed back with those steady, knowing eyes. The dog who'd pulled her out of grief by refusing to let someone die on his watch. The dog who'd saved 34 lives and counted Emma twice now.
Can I think about it? Take your time. But Sarah, don't hide anymore. The world's got too many people who need finding.
He walked away, leaving Sarah standing in the parking lot with Ranger, and a future that suddenly held possibilities she'd thought were gone, forever. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the training facility outside Anchorage, watching a new class of search and rescue handlers learn to trust their dogs. She'd agreed to consult for the FBI part-time, training K9 teams for wilderness operations. It wasn't full-time work, wasn't quite enough to fill the Marcus-shaped hole in her life, but it was something. Ranger demonstrated scent discrimination for the class, finding specific targets in increasingly complex scenarios with the kind of precision that made grown men shake their heads in awe. He was 8 now, gray frosting his muzzle, but he still worked like he was half his age. Emma and Rebecca visited twice a month. Emma had started therapy, was learning to process her trauma in healthy ways, was slowly becoming a kid again instead of a survivor. She'd told Sarah once that she wanted to train search dogs when she grew up, wanted to be like Sarah, wanted to save people the way Ranger saved her. Sarah had told her the truth.
Ranger didn't just save you. He saved me, too.
The trials were ongoing. Derek Hartley and 3 Arctic Energy executives were facing federal charges. More arrests were coming. The indigenous communities were getting their land back, their voices back, their dignity back. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was real justice, and that counted for something. On the anniversary of Marcus's death, Sarah took Ranger to the mountain where it happened. She stood at the memorial marker and spoke to her dead husband the way she should have spoken 18 months ago.
I'm sorry I didn't listen.
I'm sorry you died because I second-guessed both of us. But I'm not sorry anymore for surviving. I'm not sorry for still being here. And I think, maybe, you'd be okay with that. Ranger leaned against her leg. Sarah's hand found his ears.
I'm going to keep going, she continued. Going to keep training, keep working, keep trusting this dog when he tells me something's wrong. Because he's never been wrong, Marcus. Not once. And I'm done doubting that.
The wind carried snow across the mountain, soft and clean and forgiving. Sarah turned away from the memorial and headed back down the trail toward the living. 6 months after that, Sarah got a call from Rebecca. Emma wanted Ranger at her school for career day, wanted to show her classmates the dog who saved her life, wanted to tell them that sometimes heroes have 4 legs, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust someone, or something, that loves you. Sarah agreed. She and Ranger showed up at the elementary school on a bright spring morning when the snow was finally melting and the world looked new again. Emma introduced them to her class with such pride that Sarah had to blink back tears.
This is Ranger, Emma announced. He found me when I was lost. He saved me when bad people tried to hurt me. And he's the reason I'm alive to stand here today.
The children applauded. Ranger's tail wagged. And Sarah understood something profound. She'd spent 18 months thinking salvation was something that happened in grand, dramatic moments, in perfect timing, in being strong enough to never need help. But salvation was actually much simpler than that. It was a dog who refused to come inside. It was instinct honored instead of ignored. It was choosing to follow when everything said stop. It was trusting that sometimes God spoke through animals, through storms, through impossible situations that required impossible faith. Emma hugged Ranger after the presentation, buried her face in his fur the way she had in the snow that terrible night.
I love you, she whispered. You're my best friend.
Ranger accepted this with the dignity of a dog who'd heard it before and would hear it again, because he'd spend his entire life earning it. That evening, Sarah sat on her rebuilt porch watching the sun set over the wilderness that had almost killed her and Emma both. Ranger lay at her feet, peaceful and content. The world was quiet in the way that felt safe instead of isolating. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca.
Emma wants to know if we can visit this weekend. She made Ranger a gift.
Sarah smiled and typed back.
Anytime. Doors always open.
She set the phone down and looked at Ranger.
You know what we did, right? We saved her. We actually saved her.
Ranger's tail thumped twice against the wood. Message received. Sarah leaned back and closed her eyes, feeling the last of the day's warmth on her face. Marcus was gone, and that would always hurt. But Emma was alive. Rebecca was safe. Justice was being served. And Sarah Chen was no longer hiding from the world. She was living in it again. Because sometimes miracles don't arrive as thunder from heaven. Sometimes they arrive as a dog who won't stop barking,
a cry in the snow that shouldn't be there, and a woman who finally learned that courage isn't never being afraid. It's following anyway when someone needs you. Emma survived because Ranger listened to something human ears couldn't hear. Sarah survived because she finally trusted what the dog was telling her. And together, they proved that salvation isn't about being perfect or fearless or always knowing the right answer. It's about showing up when it matters, fighting when it counts, and refusing to let darkness win. The good things fight harder than the bad things.
Emma had said that once, in a moment of childish wisdom. She'd been right. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at Ranger one more time.
Good boy,
she said softly.
You're such a good boy.
Ranger's eyes met hers, steady and sure, and in them Sarah saw every life he'd saved, every person he'd pulled from darkness, every choice to keep digging when giving up would have been easier. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear fur and follow their instincts and refuse to stop until someone's safe. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they save you twice, once in the snow and once in your soul.